Japan just pulled off something the United States couldn't do in 10 years? A weapon so powerful it fires projectiles at 7 times the speed of sound, costs a fraction of traditional missiles, and literally cuts through steel like it's butter. And that's just one of 5 game-changing weapons they've unveiled in the last 18 months. The country that once pledged never to build an offensive military is now developing technology that has defense analysts in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow completely rewriting their strategic plans. This isn't about history, this is about the future of warfare, and Japan just became a player nobody saw coming. 3 nuclear-armed neighbors, all of them with active territorial disputes or historical grudges. China sending warships into contested waters on a weekly basis. Their North Korea firing ballistic missiles that fly directly over Japanese cities. Russia conducting military exercises just kilometers from Japanese shores while making veiled nuclear threats. For any other country, this would be considered an existential crisis. For Japan, this wasn't a crisis anymore. It was the new normal. And somewhere in the quiet labs of Japanese defense contractors and the planning rooms of the Ministry of Defense, a decision was made. Stop hoping someone else would protect them. Stop playing defense. Start building weapons that would make any potential aggressor think twice before pulling the trigger. What happened next shocked the entire defense world. Japan didn't just announce they were updating their military, they revealed they were doubling their entire defense budget, launching the biggest military buildup since World War II, and developing weapons systems that would make them one of the most technologically advanced militaries on Earth. We're talking about a $300 billion transformation that's happening right now as you're watching this video. And the weapons they're creating? Some of them are so advanced that even American military officials are impressed. One senior Pentagon analyst called it the most significant shift in Pacific military balance in a generation. Let's start with the weapon that broke the internet in military circles, the electromagnetic railgun. Now, I need you to understand something. The United States spent over $500 million trying to develop a working railgun for their Navy. They had the best engineers, unlimited funding, and a decade of research, and they failed. They couldn't make it work reliably. They couldn't figure out how to mount it on a ship without tearing the vessel apart from the recoil. They abandoned the project entirely. Japan looked at that failure and said, "Hold my sake." In April 2025, Japan unveiled something that made defense contractors around the world sit up and pay attention. A working prototype of an electromagnetic railgun mounted on an actual naval vessel, the JS Asuka. Not a concept, not a simulation, a real weapon on a real ship. And in September 2025, they took it out to sea and fired it successfully at a target vessel. The projectile hit its mark traveling at Mach 7.35. That's 2.5 kilometers per second, 9,000 kilometers per hour. Wouldn't to put that in perspective, that's faster than most anti-ship missiles. That's faster than some hypersonic weapons. And here's the kicker. The projectile itself has no explosive. It doesn't need one. The kinetic energy alone, just the pure speed and mass of impact, delivers the same destructive force as a 1,000-kilogram car hitting a wall at 140 kilometers per hour. But why does this matter? Why is a railgun such a big deal? 3 reasons. First, cost. A traditional anti-missile interceptor can cost anywhere from $1 to $3 million per shot. A railgun projectile? Less than $100,000. Some estimates put it as low as $25,000. Second, speed. You can't dodge something traveling at Mach 7. And current missile defense systems struggle to intercept hypersonic threats because they're just too fast. The railgun's projectiles are faster. Third, logistics. Traditional missiles need fuel, complex guidance systems, and careful storage. Railgun projectiles are basically dense metal slugs. You can stack them like bullets. A single ship could carry hundreds of rounds instead of dozens of missiles. Japan invested 46 billion yen, roughly $300 million, over 3 years to crack what the Americans couldn't. They solved the power problem by developing a capacitor system that can generate 5 megajoules per shot, with plans to scale up to 20 megajoules. They solved the barrelware problem through advanced materials engineering. And they solved the targeting problem with AI-assisted fire control systems that can track and engage hypersonic missiles. The weapon is specifically designed to counter the exact threat that keeps Japanese defense planners up at night. Chinese and Russian hypersonic missiles that could strike Japanese cities or military bases with virtually no warning. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. While Japan was developing the railgun, they were simultaneously working on something else. Something that transforms their entire defensive posture into an offensive capability. The Type 12 surface-to-ship missile. And before you think that sounds boring, let me tell you what this thing actually does. The original Type 12 was a coastal defense missile. It could reach out about 200 kilometers and sink ships that got too close to Japanese waters. Useful, but limited. The upgraded version, the Type 12 Kai, has a range of 900 kilometers. Future versions are expected to hit 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers. Think about what that means strategically. Japan is an island nation. For decades, their entire military doctrine was based on defending their shores. If an enemy fleet approached, they'd try to sink it before it got close. If enemy bombers took off, they'd try to shoot them down, but they couldn't strike back at the source. They couldn't hit the air bases those bombers launched from. They couldn't target the ports those warships sailed from. The Type 12 Kai changes everything. It can reach deep into enemy territory. It can hit military installations in North Korea. It can target Chinese naval bases and airfields. It can strike before the enemy even launches their attack. And it's not just about range. This missile flies at Mach 0.9, just under the speed of sound, while hugging the ocean surface at 5 to 10 meters altitude. That's below most radar coverage. By the time a ship's defense systems detect it, they have seconds to respond. The missile also has full land attack capability now. It's not just anti-ship anymore. It can take out radar installations, command centers, missile batteries, anything. Japan has already begun deploying these across their southwestern islands, creating overlapping zones of coverage that essentially turn the entire East China Sea into a no-go zone for enemy naval forces. They're putting them on ships, on submarines through existing torpedo tubes, and even developing air-launched versions for their patrol aircraft. But Japan wasn't done. While developing the railgun and upgrading the Type 12, they were also working on their own hypersonic weapon, the Hypersonic Velocity Gliding Projectile, or HVGP. And this is where things get absolutely wild. Hypersonic weapons are considered the cutting edge of military technology. They travel at more than 5 times the speed of sound. They can maneuver unpredictably during flight. They're incredibly difficult to intercept. China has them. Russia has them. The United States is racing to field them. And now, Japan has them too. The HVGP was supposed to be operational by 2029. Japan finished it 3 years early. They accelerated the program because the threat environment was changing that fast. The missile is ground-launched from a massive 8-wheeled truck that can drive into position, fire, and relocate before anyone even knows it was there. Block 1 can hit targets between 500 and 900 kilometers away. Block 2A, currently in development, will reach 2,000 kilometers. Block 2B will hit 3,000 kilometers. At that range, and Japan could strike targets deep inside mainland China from the safety of their home islands. The weapon underwent testing in California with American support, and the United States approved $200 million in equipment and assistance for the program. That's how seriously Washington takes this capability. The Japan Ground Self-Defense Force publicly unveiled the HVGP during their Fuji 2025 military exercise. They've tested it on difficult terrain. They've fired it from naval vessels. They've even transported the launcher aboard their C-2 cargo aircraft to demonstrate rapid deployment capability. The plan is to station these systems in both Kyushu in the south, aimed at China, and Hokkaido in the north, covering Russia. For the first time since World War II, Japan has the ability to launch deep strike missions against enemy territory. That's a massive psychological and strategic shift. Now, you might be wondering, why is Japan doing all of this? What changed? Let me give you the geopolitical context, because this is where the story gets really serious. Japan is surrounded by 3 nuclear-armed neighbors who all have active territorial disputes or historical grievances with them. China claims the Senkaku Islands, which Japan controls, and regularly sends Coast Guard vessels and military aircraft into the area. Chinese President Xi Jinping has repeatedly stated that reunification with Taiwan is inevitable, and any conflict over Taiwan would almost certainly drag Japan in, because American forces in Japan would be involved in defending Taiwan. That's not speculation, that's stated policy. Then North Korea has fired over 100 missiles in the last 3 years, many of which flew directly over Japanese territory. Some of those missiles are now nuclear capable, and Pyongyang has explicitly threatened to strike Japan if war breaks out on the Korean peninsula. And Japan and Russia never technically signed a peace treaty ending World War II. They're still in dispute over the Kuril Islands, and Russian military aircraft routinely probe Japanese airspace while their naval forces conduct exercises near Japanese waters. After Russia invaded Ukraine, Japan joined Western sanctions, and Moscow added Japan to its list of unfriendly nations. Russian officials have made veiled nuclear threats directed at countries supporting Ukraine, which includes Japan. So Japan looked at this situation and realized their old strategy wasn't going to cut it anymore. Hoping that America would always be there to protect them wasn't enough. They needed to be able to defend themselves, and if necessary, hit back hard enough to make any potential aggressor think twice. That's why they're not just building defensive systems. They're building what military strategists call counterstrike capabilities, the ability to hit enemy bases and launch sites before a second wave of attacks can be launched against Japan. And these aren't the only weapons in development. Japan is simultaneously working on 7 new missile types. They're co-developing the Glide Phase Interceptor with the United States, a system specifically designed to shoot down hypersonic weapons during the glide phase of their flight, when they're most vulnerable. They've begun mass production of the upgraded Type 03 Chusam Kai air defense system, which is optimized for hypersonic missile defense. They're developing a hypersonic cruise missile powered by a scramjet engine that will fly even faster than the HVGP. Kawasaki Heavy Industries is building a long-range cruise missile demonstrator expected to be operational between 2030 and 2033. And on top of their domestic programs, Japan is buying American weapons too, and 400 Tomahawk cruise missiles for their warships. AGM-158 JASSM air-launched cruise missiles for their F-35 and F-15 fighter jets. They're building an integrated air and missile defense network that connects everything together: radar systems, satellites, ships, aircraft, ground batteries, all sharing data in real time through AI-assisted command and control systems. The goal is to create a seamless defensive bubble over Japan, while simultaneously being able to project power across the entire Western Pacific. The scale of this transformation is staggering. Japan's defense budget has increased for 12 consecutive years. They're not just buying weapons, they're restructuring their entire military. They're investing heavily in unmanned systems, drones, and autonomous platforms. And they're building new bases on their southwestern islands. They're expanding their amphibious assault capabilities. They're even revising their legal framework to allow for more aggressive rules of engagement. This is a country that's essentially reinventing its military from the ground up, and they're doing it faster than anyone predicted. Here's what really gets me though. Japan is doing this with broad public support. Polls show that a majority of Japanese citizens now favor stronger defense capabilities. That's a massive shift from even a decade ago when pacifist sentiment was much stronger. The threats have become real enough, visible enough, that people are willing to abandon 70 years of post-war military restraint. That psychological shift might be even more important than the weapons themselves. So what does this mean for the future? If you're in Washington, you're probably relieved. A stronger Japan means a stronger alliance, more burden sharing, and a more credible deterrent against China. If you're in Beijing, you're concerned. Japan's new capabilities complicate any plans for Taiwan and force China to dedicate more resources to defending their eastern coast. If you're in Pyongyang or Moscow, you're recalculating. Threatening Japan just became a lot more dangerous. And if you're a smaller country in Southeast Asia, watching all of this unfold, you're probably thinking very carefully about which side to align with, because the military balance in the Pacific is shifting in real time. Japan's transformation represents one of the most significant geopolitical developments of this decade. A country that swore off war is now building some of the most advanced weapons on Earth. A nation that relied entirely on American protection is now developing the capability to defend itself and strike back. And the technology they're creating, from railguns to hypersonics, is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in modern warfare. The Japan that emerged from World War II is gone. What's replacing it is something the world hasn't seen in 80 years. A militarily powerful, technologically advanced Japan that's ready to fight if necessary. If you found this video valuable, hit that subscribe button because we're covering the biggest shifts in global military power as they happen. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Japan's military buildup makes the region safer or more dangerous? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.